Funding for the art show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, and viewers like you. Thank you.
In this edition of the Art Show, the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance is engaging in a double dose of collaboration.
When we're dancing with the Dayton Philharmonic, you can feel energy in the building.
Meet a craftsman who puts soul into every instrument he creates.
I kind of see how it's going to transform into what its final thing is going to be.
A designer strives for clean lines and a cleaner world.
I think you have to build things to last.
Manhole covers as high art.
Well, the great works, I didn't know they were going to happen.
And a celebrity chef channels her unique heritage.
Each of these recipes has a person attached to it, a memory, an ingredient.
It's all ahead on this edition of The Art Show. Hello, I'm Rodney Veal, and this is The Art Show, where each week we get unprecedented access to local, regional, and national artists and arts organizations. In the world of art, collaborations can challenge, energize, and ultimately produce fresh and vital works. Collaborations get us out of our comfort zone. We are forced to see things a little differently, and often that's when we experience our greatest personal and artistic growth.
As a new ballet springs into production, the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance is in the midst of another creative collaboration.
I just find it endlessly fascinating to watch the work that Karen does with the dancers in the studio, because she's, in a way, essentially doing the same job that I do, but in a different medium, a different discipline with different language. It's always interesting to see how someone else handles the interpersonal relationship with the artists.
For every minute of choreography you see, it's between an hour and 2 hours of work. But you really have to find things within the music, within the layers, to be able to start to pull steps from it. I can remember times when I would see a phrase in my head and then look and see that it actually came to fruition. It's just mind-boggling. That's what I thought in my head. This is so great. It's also nice to see what the dancers have to bring to it. I mean, you might give them something, it may not work, and so you're seeing where they're gonna go with it. But that's a really important way for a dancer to grow, because it helps them become choreographers themselves. It helps them to listen to the music better. They become part of the creation. People will say, oh, it's Karen's ballet, and I always say, you know, it's not my, because I didn't do that step. They did that step.
The preparation routine for the musicians and the dancers is very different. The dancers, take a fairly long period of time to learn the work.
Standard is a 5-week rehearsal period to put on a show. And then our weeks are normally 6-day weeks, working about 9 to 5.
The musicians, on the other hand, they have the music in hand about a month ahead of time, and they work on their own.
For us to put together a ballet performance in 3 rehearsals, including the dress rehearsals with the stage and everything else, is a fairly normal occurrence, and it sounds insane, but that's the way we do it. As long as everyone does their homework, we're good.
Neil is wonderful, Neil Gittleman, our conductor, because he will come into the studio and watch and read the music at the same time.
I spend time in the ballet studio watching the piece and learning what happens and making little squiggles in my score so that I know what's happening in the dance vis-a-vis the music.
We can't ask for more than that, and I think that that's one of the key components to getting it right.
Dancing to live music is so much better. I love it.
When we're dancing with the Dayton Philharmonic, You can feel energy in the building. It's just a complete package.
You can hear the instruments better. You can really hear like the soul of the violinist.
The spontaneity and the energy that you get in a live performance that you can't really get anywhere else. And that's what makes it so exciting.
It's the difference between a microwavable meal or a five-star restaurant. I mean, you're gonna get full one way or the other, but how do you do it?
The new ballet is about the decisions we make in our journey through life. 4 weeks from curtain, creative decisions are beginning to take their final form.
We might finish it today or tomorrow, so I don't actually know how it's gonna end yet.
Now I don't even have the music for it. 3 weeks before the first rehearsal, the librarian has the parts ready for us to pick up.
One of the challenges of playing a new piece of music is there are often no preconceptions about what's supposed to happen.
It's all a mystery until we get to the first rehearsal and put it together. And sometimes it just clicks and it makes sense, and sometimes we're all looking at each other like, what's going on? So that's why we have Neil.
Creating something new takes inspiration, energy, and courage.
The anxiety starts back up when you get into the theater and then you look at it for the first time as an audience viewer and you think, what the heck did I do? But you just have to walk away and trust that the baby will come out perfectly with all 10 fingers and 10 toes and everybody will be happy.
It'll be an awesome show.
I love collaborating. I think the fact that we have this very unique collaboration between the Philharmonic and the opera and the ballet, I think we're still the only city in the States that has joined forces. It gives us the opportunity to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
And those things are starting to bear fruit, and I think it's the arts, so it ain't easy. But I do think that we are stronger together than we ever were or would have been separately.
See the collaborations in action. Find the link to performances on the art show page at thinktv.org. Up next, we learn how to make a guitar really play. Sure, it takes talent on the part of the musician, but behind every good guitar player is a skilled craftsman. Or at least that's what John Hill would say. The Cleveland-based woodworker crafts only the finest instruments, and in this segment, he explains how his guitars set his customers apart.
I was one of those people where I just loved the wood shop. When I started building guitars, this was in like 83 or 84, and it was a lot of handwork, files and rasps and belt sanders, and I found out early that I kind of had a knack for that stuff, and I started playing guitar, getting interested in guitar, and obviously guitars are made out of wood, so I just kind of thought that I could sort of build my own guitar, and so that's really where it started for me, high school. People that don't play guitar, that build guitars, I don't know how they could do it. I'm just not a great musician where I can just jump up on stage and just hold my own, but I try and play enough to where I understand all the idiosyncrasies that these guys want at a high level.
I never was into custom-made guitars, but for this one, I had to have it. The guitar was so beautiful, and the neck was so thin and fast, and the action was like a runway, you know. I mean, I was just like, I couldn't stop shredding on it. I just couldn't put it down.
The form always follows function. I believe in that rule 100%. Like, it has to work as an instrument when it's done. You know, I always visualize everything in my head. You know, I can kind of see how it's going to transform into what its final thing is going to be. I would start out with a piece of paper that's big enough for a whole guitar, and I would just strike a center line and take another guitar and kind of trace it and get the basic width elements, you know, the width and the length, and I just sort of start filling in all those pieces of the puzzle until I get it way I want it to really look. And then I'll transfer all those final curves and drawings, I'll scan it, and then I'll bring it into like a CAD program, engineer it. So after the CNC machine cuts the parts out, CNC stands for Computer Numeric Control, and that just means it's a router head that's controlled by a computer. I have it doing fretboard radiuses, like fret slots, neck shapes. We do have to sand those parts. There's machine marks in them, or like some of the wood could chip off. When the bodies and necks are finish sanded, and then they go to paint. And then the hardware elements, the hardware is like the bridge, the tuning keys, the knobs, the jack plate, things like that, the pickups. Our guitars are different because of the way that they're assembled and set up, where it's a kind of a spiritual thing for me in a way, But I'll clean my workbench off and I'll lay out all the parts like really neat, and with the neck and the body and everything ready to go, and I'll take a picture of it, and I'll send it to the guy and I'll say, hey, I'm starting to assemble your guitar.
He takes a real lot of care into hand making these things from the ground up, every aspect of the guitar. And that's what they used to do in the old days at all the famous guitar companies that we know. Now they just mass produce them so much with machines. It's beautiful, I mean, as far as cosmetically. But if you pick it up, it's really nothing like the ones that were made back in the old days. So each guitar he develops or has an idea to make, it is absolutely made, from the ground up, with every little detail, okay, just right. I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing.
So the assembly process for me lately has been the final chapter and like mastering what the whole guitar is about. Guitars, when they're set up well, people that really have an ear for sound qualities, they appreciate it more.
There are some guitars that are inspirational to someone. You pick them up and all of a sudden you just know, like, oh my God, this is something that, I can't put it down. It's giving me more ideas. It's inspiring me to go farther to another step.
And it motivates them to like write or just be creative. They can like, wow, this really sounds magical. And like, kind of, let me play this chord and let me like try this thing and let me play it through this amp. And the next thing that they're creating music, they're playing music, that's where it's all about for me. So I really think that the music in general is what I try and strive for, is just to make it a musical instrument so that people will want to play it, want to write with it, and want to show it to people. I'd like to keep them for about a week after we actually finish the assembly process, and I play them, I tweak them, just dial them in a little bit. But yeah, they're hard to let go. Like if your dog has puppies or something, you got to give all the puppies away, right? It's tough.
Discover more about this Ohio artist by visiting the Art Show page at thinktv.org.
Are you an artist or know an artist with an interesting story? Pitch it to us. Send an email to theartshow@thinktv.org. Include contact information and links to performances or art samples online.
Designer Kenji Kondo is changing the way we think about manufacturing goods. The blueprints for every condo design, from small household items to large pieces of furniture, can be shared electronically and hence created by manufacturers wherever Kondo happens to have customers.
age, I was influenced by design, and I always knew that everything that you touched was designed. I remember growing up and even going to a restaurant with my family, and every meal was started this way. And my dad would make this little object out of the wrapper of a pair of chopsticks, and it would become the rest for the chopsticks. Everywhere you turn, somebody designed something that you're touching. The cost of machinery has come down so drastically that anybody can buy the equipment and start working. The technology has kind of put manufacturing basically on its ear. What this has done is made it almost like going to Kinko's. When somebody comes in and if they know what their end product is, then obviously it's very easy. If they don't know what their end product is, all of us can help them find their end product. And not that it's any new concept. Industrial design houses have done it forever, but it's at a much more accessible level. So you can walk in the door, hand somebody a jump drive, and a day later or 30 minutes later, you can walk out with an object. Our first step is taking our idea and bringing it into the computer. And in this case, we bring it into a 3D program. After we're comfortable with the drawing, we'll either take it into a process called rapid prototyping, or in this case, we build a model using a laser cutter to cut all the pieces. Once the fit of the model is correct, we can then take it and bring it up to full scale, and we bring it onto a CNC router, which cuts the parts out of plywood that can then be assembled, painted, and delivered. You can get all the mistakes out of the drawing pretty much in one shot. Make sure all the notches will line up, and that way, when it goes into the real material, we now know that the fit is correct. My range of design goes from a tissue box cover all the way to furniture. We've pretty much cut everything that you can cut in a laser or on a CNC router or a plasma cutter. One of the main reasons I started looking at this avenue for manufacturing was that for a long time I was on the road a tremendous amount, and I had all this equipment and it was lying dormant for 50% of the year. For me, it felt like it was a way to have it running and give access to people. Once somebody purchases an object, it can be made quickly with just a push of a button. And at the same time, it can be made both locally, and I can send that same file to Brooklyn and have it manufactured there as well. So your carbon footprint is decreased because there's no trucks involved. So that means that the manufacturing points are also saving that dollar for the consumer. I came from a sculpture and architecture background, and In sculpture, you make objects that initially make you happy first, with the hopes that they make somebody else happy, or they understand what you're thinking about. To me, it's really, design is trying to make objects that people will keep. When I was growing up, I grew up with great design, and a lot of those objects I still have. I think you have to build things to last, because the resources aren't there to not do that. I mean, I want my objects to last. I want them to be around for a very long time. What's important in my work is that it's solid, in that people recognize it and appreciate it. I think good aesthetics almost create peace in people.
If you're drawn to the idea of self-manufacturing your designs and ideas, check out Proto Build Bar in downtown Dayton. It's an amazing creative and technology experience center that's part 3D printing lab, part electronic makerspace, and part cafe. Visit thinktv.org and click on the art show for more information. Now, while walking down the street, you may not notice the manhole covers beneath your feet. But when Central Florida artist Bobby Mastrangelo transforms them into pieces of art, it's difficult not to appreciate their inherent simplicity and beauty. Here's a look.
You put something down that represents your inner soul, and it's down there on paper, and then up on the wall, other people can enjoy it. And you feel fulfilled that you've done something outside of yourself. Well, the great works, I didn't know they were going to happen. It just evolved. I grew up in an atmosphere of We Love Renoir and the Impressionists and so on. And so when I went back to college to study art, the professor was giving me low marks. I didn't like that. I'm competitive. So I said, what do I need to do? He said, you need a theme or a style or nobody will know who you are. I said, manhole covers. It's like Eureka. That's what I'm going to do. And that was 1979. And once I found out that that was a theme that nobody else was doing, and I entered a show in Manhattan called New Art in New York, and people advised me, they said, well, try your new theme. I entered it and they said, congratulations, you're in it. And I had 6 weeks to hurry up and do this great manhole cover artwork, so I just got started. I only had a few pieces and to show them, and then I had to have a whole wall. And that got started, and it's been going on ever since. I start the manhole cover with an idea of which one I want to do. First I take pictures of it the way it is, especially if it's got litter with it, and I've got that documentation. Then I brush off the litter and secure the corners, and then I have a kneeling pad, and I have a regular rubbing block crayon to take the rubbing. Now I'm getting a little bit older. I see if I can get someone else to do the rubbing for me. With carbon paper, I trace the rubbing onto the foam. And sometimes there are various layers. I have to plan how I'm going to hang it and how I'm going to work it all out. But I carve with those little snap-off knives and use a knife sharpener in between and carve out the various parts of the manhole cover. Then I cover the whole piece with either that plaster bandage wrap that they use for making casts, either that, or I use cheesecloth. Then after that's done, it gets painted with cement. Then I take it outside and throw some more sand on, put some glue down, throw some sand, stuff in a little bit of moss, anything. Sometimes I'm out there sweeping up the grit on the streets and bring it back in and dump it in the crevices of my manhole cover. It's fun watching it evolve, and people, like when we were in San Francisco and I did a rubbing of their manhole cover, there was a whole crowd around. They were videotaping it and watching it. It becomes, and anybody who's gone out to do a rubbing has an adventure. They do it for me. They say everybody thinks they're crazy, but they all stand and watch them do it. It's probably whatever I'm working on at the time I love, because that absorbs all my imagination right then. I love the one from North Carolina, the cross cannons and the palm tree, because that has a whole legend to it, and I love the design of it. And sometimes that outside spirit captures your imagination, and that goes into it all. I think it's a great experience.
Before we wrap up things tonight, celebrity chef Ingrid Hoffman shares the inspiration for her latest cookbook. Born in Colombia and raised in a multicultural home, Hoffman grew up eating a multitude of cuisines. She reveals how the fusion of taste and cooking styles is at the heart of her work.
Well, Latin Delight is a way of enjoying food, bursting with flavor, without a lot of calories. And the concept is eat from the ground or it had a mother. That means no preservatives and no additives. And easy to do, which is where I come in. I make my own books, I create my own recipes. Every dot, dotted I, comma, sentence, word, phrase, idea in that book is mine. And I take great pride in that. I was born in Colombia, Colombian parents, but we have Peruvian, Bolivian, German, Argentinian, a little bit of everything in it. So that's why I always say I'm a mutt, and my food reflects that. I was also raised in the Caribbean and in Europe, so when you know that, you sort of recognize all of those flavors. I actually truly believe that Latin ingredients lend themselves the best to have health food with flavor, just not frying them and changing up how we're used to cooking. And with all of our spices and all of our herbs, we can bring so much flavor without calories. I enjoy being in my kitchen creating, having fun, playing. It's like playing lab, it's like playing fantasy. It's like playing with dolls. I'm playing, to be Susie Homemaker. Each of these recipes has a person attached to it, a memory, an ingredient. Whether it's oatmeal, that means my grandmother. Coffee means my grandfather. So these recipes have stories. They're attached to an emotional connection. Traveling gives me a lot of inspiration. Windows of stores give me ideas. You see a setting that all of a sudden ooh, that's like a shipwreck. And I can imagine a salmon with guava barbecue and rum. It's like it always starts with the fantasy. And then if I have the fantasy in my head, the visual, then I can put the food onto the plate. And that means texture, color, balancing the plate, almost like creating an art piece. I am a professional eater. I never set out to cook because I wanted to be a great cook. I set out to cook because I wanted to have an amazing meal. And then I wanted to share it with everyone.
And that wraps it up for this edition of The Art Show. There's a lot of fantastic art being made out in the community. Please go out and see some. Until next time, I'm Rodney Veal, and thanks for watching.
Funding for the Art Show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, Ohio Arts Council, Ohio Humanities Council, and viewers like you. Thank you.